Question of the day. Whose perspective defines truth? Who gets to decide what counts as knowledgeable and whose expertise and experiences are left out? According to Feminist Standpoint Theory, where we stand in the world shapes what we see. And if we want to understand power and communication, we have to start by listening to those who have been pushed to the margins. Welcome back to Communication Campus. I'm your host, Dr. Malynnda Stewart. In today's episode, we are exploring Feminist Standpoint Theory, a perspective that challenges us to rethink knowledge, truth, and communication by centering the lived experiences of women and other marginalized groups. Welcome. Now, feminist standpoint theory emerged in the 1970s and the 1980s as feminist scholars began asking crucial and critical questions. Why do most social theories reflect on the experiences of men? Most often, white, Western, and privileged men. Why aren't other representations included? Where are the other voices? Now, thinkers like Nancy Hartsock, Sandra Harding, Patricia Hill Collins, and Dorothy Smith all argue that knowledge has a standpoint, a social position shaped by power, experience, and history. They believed that people who live in the margins of power, especially women, often have clearer insights into how power actually works because they must navigate those systems that were not designed for them. Now, a standpoint we need to understand on a definitional level. So, a standpoint isn't just an opinion, it is situated perspective shaped by social position. It develops through shared experiences of marginalization and resistance. Now, situated knowledge is understanding that all knowledge is partial, and it's shaped where we stand socially and historically. And another piece of this is that claiming objectivity can actually hide power imbalances. We also need to think of the epistemic advantage. Marginalized groups often see the world more completely because they must understand both their own experiences and those of dominant groups to survive and succeed. In other words, those at the margins often see the cracks in the system that those at the center never have to worry about because they've never really had to notice them. Now, in communication studies, feminist standpoint theory challenges traditional ideas of neutrality in research, leadership, and even the media. It's going to ask who is speaking, whose voices are being amplified or dismissed, what perspectives are missing from these conversations. Now, from interpersonal relationships to media representations, standpoint theory reminds us that communication always happens within a system of power. Women reporting workplace harassment, for example, may have insights into those that are in leadership. A woman reporting workplace harassment, for example, may have insights into those in leadership, insulated by privilege, and therefore blind to them. That's not bias. That is standpoint knowledge. Now, later feminist scholars, especially Patricia Hill Collins and Bell Hooks, expanded standpoint theory to include intersectionality, the idea that race, gender, class, sexuality, and other identities overlap and shape the lived experience. This means there's not one woman's standpoint, but many, and each are shaped by culture, history, and context. Now, feminist standpoint theory continues to evolve, providing a foundation for inclusive, critical, and justice oriented practice. All right, to sum this up, knowledge and communication are shaped by social positioning. Marginalized perspectives reveal hidden structures of power. And listening to these standpoints doesn't divide, it deepens our collective understanding. Thank you for joining me in this episode of Communication Campus. I'm your host, Dr. Malynnda Stewart, and we will continue in our next episode more and more about identity and gender and culture, and exploring how power shapes the way that we understand and change the world around us. Remember, sometimes the most insightful knowledge comes from those whose voices have been overlooked the longest, which means we need to keep communicating so that those voices can be heard.